Good afternoon, everyone. We are Tessa, Smith-Claxton, and Aldrin Rabsatt from the British Virgin Islands, and we represent the Ministry of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change. And today, our presentation is going to be about a fish landing site, specifically at 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃 on the island of Tortola. And we're just going to present on what we did, why we did it, and its application to our purposes. So Tessa is just going to start us off and tell us, first of all, what in the world is a fish landing site and why is it important?
Okay. So in the Virgin Islands, this exercise was actually very timely for us because we're in the process now of looking at assessing all of our fish landing sites throughout the Virgin Islands to look at how they can be developed, whether or not we should develop them further. So the opportunity to use the drones to help us to assess these areas was something that we jumped at this opportunity. In terms of this specific project, we looked at the fish landing site in 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃. Now, 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃 is a coastal residential fishing and farming community on the north shore of Tortola, which is the largest of the Virgin Islands, on the British side. And it's a coastal community, so there is rocky coastline and offshore patchy coral reef, and it also rises into an upland evergreen forest, which is Sage Mountain. Sage Mountain, which is our highest point, drains into this 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃 area. In terms of the specific activities that take place in 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃, again, as I said, it's a residential coastal fishing and farming community. There is a sizable reclamation that was done there to support our annual Emancipation Festival celebrations. We also hold monthly cultural activities there that focus on heritage and the arts. In terms of specific applications now for the use of the drone and the mapping applications, obviously for planning and development of the blue economy, as fisheries is a major part of it, disaster management and mitigation planning, the fisheries development of the fisheries sector, looking at it for management and evaluation purposes. We also, in 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃, as I said, there is a intersection with the farming community. So we definitely see where there is intersection that we can use it to assess the agricultural sector in the area as well. And definitely for infrastructural and development planning, looking at utilities, building, transportation, all of that sort of stuff. So this was when we looked at, in terms of environmental and social monitoring, we definitely saw where we could use it to assess the habitat health and looking at the fish nurseries and identifying prevalent species in the area. We also definitely needed to look at quantifying the persons engaged in and benefiting from the fishing industry in this area. So we also dovetail this project with, not really dovetail it, but in addition to doing the drone mapping, we also did a survey, a community survey, where we were able to pick up a lot of this additional information to help us look at what people's perception of developing a fish landing site in this area would be.
Yes.
So in terms of the management and stakeholders, the area is managed to a certain extent by the Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change and the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, the fish landing site. And also there is a lot of community activities and community engagement in the area, so the local residents, fishers, farmers, and it's also a popular tourist site.
Wonderful. So now we're going to get a little more into the meat of the matter with the drone mapping and the monitoring flight surveys. The software that we use, as everyone has been, primarily started off with 𝗔𝗽𝗽𝗋𝗃𝗃 which would set the parameters of what area the drone operates in, distance away from home, height, etc. And then we turn, of course, to drone deploy to actually map out our areas, plan the missions, and actually prepare to fly before we go out. As you can see here on screen, we have a generalized overview of the 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 area. And if you're looking at the left side, it's actually divided into two zones. Greater 𝗣𝗏𝗃 is more from the central to left, and then Little 𝗣𝗏𝗃 center to right. The fish landing zone that we were considering is more so in the greater 𝗣𝗏𝗃 area. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm basically circling the reclamation area. And that is where we're primarily looking at. But we decided to look at the whole area to get a greater holistic view of what the ecology is like, the coastal situation. We know that there are some coastal defense projects going on and how that could possibly interact with or interfere with the proposed development that we were looking at. Coming in a little closer, this is the specific area that we were going to be looking at. It is a place that has already been used somewhat traditionally by the fishermen. As you can see, they have a little jetty there where a few boats are drawn up. There's also slightly to the right of it. Again, I'm just using my mouse to circle it around here. There is a boat ramp where the fishermen, they would pull up their boats for scraping, cleaning, launching, etc. And then a little further over to the right, there's a platform that's been traditionally used by the community for community gatherings, but also where the fisher folk, they would go and sell their fish, etc. We initially planned to map out the entirety of the 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 section, as I said, and for that we had a plan to map out a total of 45 hectares, comprising of 369 acres, taking up 2 batteries. That flight was planned for 22 minutes and 6 seconds, and we did go out on April 7th and fly it. However, while flying, we noted that there were a few glitches. There were times when the radio signal, it dropped for some reason that we couldn't quite figure out. And although we flew the entire flight, there was a great deal of the photos that did not come out. So we waited a few days and we went back to the drawing board, went back to the office, spoke with Dr. Kim, and decided to break up the mission into 2 sections, Greater 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 and then Little 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. Fly it separately and then combine them together. So what you're seeing next would have been the flight for Greater 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. Cut it down a little, 23 hectares, comprised of 184 images, 11 minutes, 49 seconds projected for. We flew that, and then we went to the Little 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 area, which was 22 hectares, 183 images planned, and it would have taken up 13 minutes and 23 seconds, excuse me. In addition to that complete area map, we also decided to fly a panorama directly over the area where the planned development would take place, so we could get a generalized view of what the area looked like. See, for instance, what it looks like just a bit offshore, how things interact with the rest of the community, and just get a general feel for the area. It's one thing to be driving along the coast and looking at it from ground level, but when you get up in the air, it gives you more of a bird's eye perspective. And finally, we did a photo plan where we circled the same area and shot it from different angles, also to get a better feel of it. Based on our flights, we were able to gather quite a bit of data. First of all, we were using the DJI Air 2S, and the total flight time that we got out of all of them would have been 31 minutes over the course of 4 different flights and 2 days. We mapped a total of 293 pictures. We actually were supposed to have gotten a whole lot more, but when we checked our flight accuracy reports, we noted that for Greater 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃, we actually got a 69% accuracy report. A lot of our pictures on that one were dropped, but since it happened to be over open ocean, that didn't really bother us. We were still able to get much valuable data because the important sites were all captured on land. When it came to Little 𝗣𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃, we did much better. 94% accuracy, very few pictures were dropped. We were able to get a very complete map based on that. 45 hectares in total mapped, a resolution of 2.7 centimeters per pixel, with an accuracy of plus or minus. As a result, we were able to get quite a number of things out of this entire survey. We were able to get a highly accurate orthomosaic map. And it's a beautiful thing when you're looking not just at when you go on Google Map, for instance, you can zoom in a certain way and get X amount of details out of it. But these maps that we're getting, because they're high resolution photos just stitched together, when we looked at it, we were able to pull so much detail out of the area and see things that we never really could understand from the shoreline. How the guts drained into the ocean, for instance, the interaction of the incoming waves with the headland, and potential for whether or not boats could safely dock up in the area, etc., things like that. We were also able to get a 3D model, which we could manipulate and in the future export out to ArcGIS Earth or Google Earth to share with other third parties that may not have access to drone deploying or be technically proficient. And finally, we're also able to get some site map overlays. I think you're seeing some of them there right now on screen, overlaid on the 3D mapping. And some of the measurements that we got, we specifically did 9 points of interest which included the reclaimed lands, the entry point to the proposed development, the boat ramp, jetty, two guts, and nearby businesses. We did 2 distance measurements, which would have been the boat ramp and also the jetty, and 5 area measurements, which were the landing site, the proposed structure that we put down. We're thinking of putting down a 30 by 40 building on the site. We're just trying to get a feel for how it would fit on the ground, what sort of space would take up. The boat ramp and also the adjoining reclamation as well. And finally, we decided to just go through the community and count and see just how many boats are still there. Carrot Bay has been a thriving fishing and farming community, but in recent years, many of the fisher folk they've turned to other things, whether taxiing or selling goods along the side of the road, as opposed to actively being fishermen. So we wanted to see like how many boats are actually out there. And we counted 20 marine vessels around the village, which is a lot, in various states of repair, but the fact that they're there shows that there is an interest still and it can be nurtured. Back to you, Tessa.
Okay, so in terms of our site monitoring strategy and recommendations, we want to continue to map this area on a quarterly basis, 4 times a year in like the first year, for us to really understand the dynamics of the area. And some of the considerations in this includes the seasonality of the fishing in the area, the hurricane season and how it affects what goes on. There's a heavy groundswell that happens there in the winter months. We also wanted to look at how the tidal flow, how high the tide is and how low it is, how the rain affects when the gut washes down, how much material comes down. The things like that we want to pick up and understand the habitat change over time. In terms of additional resources and support, we definitely want to have interagency support. We're not planners, so a lot of this information we hope to, because we want to move out from this Carrot Bay and visit other fish landing sites so that we get an overall view of what the condition of all of our fish landing sites are, and that interagency support and input and participation to help us with development of these sites is important. Obviously, training and development for the staff is there are other members of staff that have done drone training with OECF, but definitely not as in-depth as us and this course, which we feel would be really helpful for the staff. So we feel that we're in a good enough position to do some level of training and development of the staff to move on. Definitely, we would want to have upgraded equipment and resources as needed, and that's going to need, obviously, financing from our government. And if ONCS wants to throw any money at us, our hands are wide open and ready to keep going. So in terms of additional data collection survey, as I mentioned before, we actually developed a community survey, and we've already started to gather feedback. We want to do community meetings, and we'll definitely use some of the footage that we've collected from this mapping exercise. Yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Thank you very
Aldrin,
much.
have any additional?
No, not really, except to say that it's really been eye-opening, the sort of things that we have learned just from being in this course.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed flying drones, but being able to use it in such a immersive way to gather data, real life data, it's been a sea change. So really appreciate it.
And the other thing too is I was telling Aldrin earlier that I've been driven through Carrot Bay several times, but I know it in a different way now. The things that you're able to see and that you're able to pick up about the natural environment from the drone is something that is difficult to collect easily from underground. So it's been really useful, and this is something we're using this for a project that we're actively working on now, but it's been very useful. Difficult to keep up with the classes sometimes. It's been useful.
Okay. Thank you.
Well done,
Thanks,
DVI.
Thank you so much. And I agree. It's really eye-opening, some of the applications that we can use these drones for. I'm getting so excited. I know we have the following section after our discussion is on testimonials. So we'll have some other opportunities to really see how we plan to use this technology for environmental conservation.